Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. It's a story of immense wealth, raw power, and a friendship that soured a long time ago. But then, in 2025, that past connection suddenly exploded back into the headlines, setting off a political firestorm and raising a ton of new questions about what really went on between these two men.
So that's the big question we're digging into here. How on earth did a social connection from decades ago, one that's just full of contradictions and all these unverified claims, suddenly become a major crisis, reaching all the way to the highest levels of American politics?
All right, so what was the spark that lit this fuse? The whole thing blew up into a full-on crisis during a few absolutely chaotic weeks in late 2025.
I mean, this story had been simmering for months, but just look at how fast everything happened. On November 12th, House Democrats dropped this huge trove of Epstein's emails. 5 days later, just 5, Trump does a complete 180 and supports a public release. And then, the very next day, Congress passes an act to make it all public. The speed of that turnaround was just staggering.
And in those thousands of emails, one number just jumped off the page: 1,500. That's how many times Donald Trump's name was reportedly mentioned. Now, let's be clear, a mention is not an accusation. But a number that big, it just intensified the public pressure and raised the stakes for whatever else might be hiding in those files.
To really get the drama of 2025, we've got to rewind. We need to go way back to a time when Trump and Epstein were running in the same elite social circles in New York and Palm Beach.
This quote, wow, it's now infamous. But back in 2002, this is how Trump talked about his friend. He called Epstein a terrific guy, even joked about their shared taste in beautiful women, noting many were on the younger side. Of course, this was long before the public knew the true horror of Epstein's crimes.
And you know, it wasn't just talk. For years, their lives were pretty intertwined. They were at parties together at Mar-a-Lago, they were famously caught on video together, and flight logs show Trump flew on Epstein's jet multiple times. I mean, Epstein was even at Trump's wedding to Marla Maples.
But then, it all fell apart. And the story of how it ended is a whole other layer to this, mainly because there isn't one clear story. Nope, there are two completely different narratives for why they split. So on one hand, you've got a business deal gone sour, a bidding war over a huge Palm Beach mansion in 2004 that Trump won. But on the other hand, there's a much more serious claim that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for good in 2007 after he allegedly harassed the teenage daughter of another member. So the exact reason, and even the timing, is still a major point of debate.
Okay, so let's jump back to those unsealed files. This is where the past comes crashing right into the present, and where that old friendship becomes a modern political crisis.
Now check this out. It's a private email from Epstein in 2017. He calls Trump dangerous, says he has not one decent cell in his body. Just think about that compared to Trump's terrific guy comment. It's a total reversal, showing this deep, simmering hatred years after they had their public falling out.
And then there was this cryptic line in another email from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. He called Trump the dog that hasn't barked, and then claimed Trump had spent hours at his house with Virginia Giuffre. Now, Giuffre has never accused Trump of any wrongdoing, but that bizarre phrasing just fueled all sorts of speculation about what Epstein could have possibly meant.
Okay, before we get to the next slide, we need to understand a quick bit of FBI jargon. The NTOC. Basically, you can think of it as the FBI's public tip line. It's where they collect raw, totally unverified information from anyone who calls in or submits something online. Keeping that context in mind is critical for what's next.
So, the document release also included a summary of tips that had been sent to that FBI tip line, the NTOC, and they contained some extremely serious allegations. But, and this is so important to stress, the source material is crystal clear. These are unverified claims from the public. Some are secondhand, some are anonymous. One was even flagged as not credible right there in the report. The source notes that the New York Times could not corroborate any of them.
So after all of that, decades of history, and this flood of new documents, what does the record actually show? Let's try to pull out the key takeaways from this incredibly complicated story.
I mean, the contradictions are just wild when you see them side by side like this. Publicly, you have Trump calling him a terrific guy, and Epstein apparently claiming Trump was a closest friend. But then privately, and after the split, it's a completely different tune. Trump allegedly called him evil, while Epstein called Trump a horrible human being and even claimed he was the one able to take him down. It's just night and day.
And after everything, the years they knew each other,
the thousands of email mentions, the unverified public tips, the record shows one crucial fact, and that is, no criminal wrongdoing has ever been established against Donald Trump in connection with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes.
This whole saga really leaves us with a difficult question, doesn't it? In this hyper-partisan world we live in, when we dig up these complicated histories that are full of contradictions and unproven claims, how do we draw the line? Where does the public's right to know end and political weaponization begin? It's a question that goes way beyond this one story.